Let's be let's begin inshallah ta'ala. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Continuing in Umdat al-Raghib from 116. We had been previously speaking about the people who say something that is kufr in itself, but that person would not be judged as a kafir because they have a situation in which they are excused. Now, from the very beginning, let me mention the Muslims do not say that if a person commits what's blasphemy, then we judge that matter to be blasphemy, but we do not render the one that did it or said it a blasphemer. We don't say that. Of course, if somebody says kufr, blasphemy, then they become a blasphemer. And if they do blasphemy, then they become a blasphemer. They commit kufr. They exit al-Islam. So that is set. But what we're talking about now is a situation in which a person might say something kufr, but because they are excused in some way, they would not be judged as a kafir. So that's what we were discussing. So let's continue in that regard, insha'Allah. Sheikh Abdullah rahimahullah said, وحالة الحكاية لكفر الغير فلا يكفر الحاكي كفر غيره. There is a situation or the state of the one that is narrating the blasphemy of someone else. So in this state, where someone is narrating the blasphemy of someone else, فَلَا يَكْفُرُ, then the narrator is not charged with blasphemy. In this situation, words of blasphemy, of kufr, run across this person's tongue. But because they are narrating, they are excused from being charged with blasphemy. They are excused from the judgment of blasphemy, meaning they are not accused of blasphemy. Now, then, it's important to understand that if we say a person is excused, then a person might think that, okay, if a person is narrating, then someone might understand this to be open-ended, general, without any restrictions or parameters. No, narrating is not all-encompassing of every scenario. There is a specific way of narrating that is Islamically considerable, that if a person met that criteria for narrating, the statement that they are narrating would not be attributed to them. It would be attributed to the one they are narrating it from. In other words, they need to use a tool of narration. Let me put it another way. The person narrating the kufr of someone else needs to utilize an Islamically considerable tool of narration. There are some things, some matters that some people may consider to be tools of narration, but Islamically, they don't stack up and they are not judged as tools of narration. Okay? So a person, if you look at it in this way, if you want to narrate something, blasphemy that someone else said, you need to make sure that you use a valid quoting statement with it. a tool of narration. Okay? Like, for example, as the Shaykh is going to mention, like, for example, you say, such and such said, and then you say the statement. Or, for example, the Christians say, and then you mention the statement that they say that is blasphemy. If one says that, the Christians say, then the statement that is kufr, for example, let's say we mention the saying of the Christians, that the Christians say Jesus is the Son of God. If someone said, the Christians say Jesus is the Son of God, this latter statement would then not be attributed to this person. Rather, it would be known, oh, this person was narrating. He wasn't saying that, or she wasn't actually initiating that. No, they were narrating. How do we know that? Because they used a valid and Islamically considerable tool of narration, a quoting statement. They said, the Christians say, or the Christians said. So that's why Sheikh Abdullah said here then, ثم الحكاية المانعة لكفر الحاكي لحظة ثم الحكاية المانعة لكفر حاكي الكفر إما أن تكون في أول الكلمة التي يحكيها عمن كفر أو بعد ذكره الكلمة عقبها، أي وكان في نيته أن يؤخر أداة الحكاية من الابتداء. فلو قال الله ساكن السماء قول المجسمة أو قالته المجسمة فهي حكاية مانعة للكفر عن الحاكي. The Shaykh said, then the preventative narration, or the narration that prevents the narrator falling into kufr, this narration or this tool, it needs to be before the statement that one is narrating from the one that committed kufr. So somebody committed kufr. You want to narrate it. So where do you say the tool of narration, the quoting statement? You could say it at the beginning. You could say such and such person said, and then you say the statement. So it could be at the beginning, or it could be after the blasphemous statement, but a person from the very beginning, even before uttering the kufr statement, even before that, they had in their intention that they will say the tool of narration, but not at the beginning, at the end. Even before they said the kufr statement, like somebody is narrating, somebody wanted to say the statement of the Christians, Jesus is the Son of God, narrating from the Christians. They could have said, the Christians say Jesus is the Son of God. But instead, they said it the other way around, but with the intention, even before they started to speak, with the intention that they're going to say the tool of narration, but at the end. So they said, Jesus is the Son of God is the claim of the Christians. Or they said, Jesus is the Son of God is a saying of the Christians. So this statement is a saying of the Christians or a claim of the Christians. This person had intended to deliberately delay saying that statement to the end. When did they intend to delay it till the end? Even before saying the statement of the Christians. This is so that someone, some trickster, doesn't come along and say, for example, saying something kufr, like to say, I hate Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. And then someone says to him, you what? This is kufr. And then he says, some people say. In his heart, he didn't intend to delay that quoting statement till the end. He outright said kufr. Can you imagine then this person if he said, "Oh no, no, yes, I mean some people, yes, to try to get out of it," but he would be judged as a kafir. Of course, we also learned from our teachers that if somebody genuinely forgot to say the quoting statement, and they intended to, they wanted to say the quoting statement, but something came over them and they said the statement. They thought they said the quoting statement, but they said that kufr statement without the quoting statement. We learned that this person would be safe from kufr. So if somebody said, so so had somebody said that Allah resides in the sky is the saying of the anthropomorphists, those that attribute body parts to Allah. If somebody said that if somebody said Allah resides in the sky is the saying of the anthropomorphists, or if somebody said Allah resides in the sky is what the anthropomorphists say, then this is considered to be narrating because they intended, even before they said the statement that they were narrating, they intended to delay the tool of narration. وإن فهي حكاية مانعة للكفر عن الحاكي. Then this tool of narration, it would prevent the one who was narrating from falling into kufr. It would prevent kufr from the narrator. It would prevent the narrator from being judged as a kafir. وإن قدمت أداة الحكاية لكلمة الكفر فهي أحسن. The Shaykh said, if a person mentioned before the statement, if they mentioned the tool of narration before mentioning the kufr statement, then this is better. Why? Because then there's no confusion. There's no confusion. Imagine somebody said, the non-Muslims say Allah sits on a throne. It's clear to you, isn't it, that the non-Muslims say that. So if somebody is in a public lesson and they hear this uh, correct statement that the non-Muslims say, meaning that they are not Muslims, of course, the kuffar, the non-Muslims say Allah is sitting on an arsh, on the arsh or on a throne. Imagine somebody said it the other way around, intending to delay the tool of narration in a public gathering where many people attend, some of them just popping in for the first times and so on. Imagine somebody said, uh, imagine somebody said, Allah is sitting on a throne, is the saying of the non-Muslims. This person should not do that. Why? Because imagine someone heard that and they hadn't learned properly. And they heard this person saying this kufr statement, Allah is sitting on a throne. So they imagined something, what they call Allah, and they imagined it sitting. And they believed that this is Allah. They would commit kufr. Then, let's say after they've accepted that, they hear is a saying of the non-Muslims. So a person needs to be wise. A person needs to be wise. A person needs to know their audience. A person needs to be merciful. A person needs to be compassionate. وقد تكون أداة الحكاية مقدرة كالذي يقول: ماذا تقول اليهود في عزير؟ فيقول المسؤول: ابن الله. فلا يشترط أن يقول: يقولون ابن الله، لأن الحكاية هنا تقديرية. And the tool of narration might be latent or hidden, but it's understood. Like if somebody said, what do the Jews say about Uzair? Or what do some of the Jews? What do the Jews say about Uzair, who was a pious person? Like if somebody said, what do the Jews say about Uzair? And so the one being asked said, the son of Allah. Then here it's not a condition for the one who was asked to say, they say the son of Allah. Why? Because here the tool of narration is latent. It's there, but it's hidden, it's understood here. From what? Because the person asking, he asked, what do the Jews say? So his statement, when this person responded with the son of Allah, what do the Jews say about Uzair? And he said, the son of Allah, it's understood that I'm answering your question. You ask, what do they say? I'm saying they say this. Okay? Like that woman whom the Prophet ﷺ asked. He came to her and he said to her, أَتَشْهَدِينَ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ? Do you bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah? She said, yes. Meaning, yes, I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah. And then he asked her, هل تشهدين أني رسول الله? Do you bear witness that I am the messenger of Allah? She said, نعم. Meaning, yes, I bear witness that you are the messenger of Allah. So there it was muqaddar. It was understood, it was latent, it was there, but it was hidden. Okay. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. This is, some scholars, they even said that saying na'am, that woman, when she said na'am to the first question and na'am to the second question, they said this is a proof that if a person wanted to embrace al-Islam and you ask them, do you bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah? And they said yes. And you said, do you bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah? And they said yes. Then by that they would be a Muslim, because they are considered to have uttered, they are considered to have been in the judgment judged as those who uttered the two testifications, because it means yes, I bear witness. يعني نعم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. Yes, I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah. And نعم يعني نعم وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. That yes, I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام. So they said by that, that person embraces al-Islam. So like this, if you're working with children or you're teaching somebody and you want them to be safe and so on, you ask them things in the form of a question. If you think that they might not use a quoting statement, you ask them in the form of a question. So when they answer, it will hold them. Okay, so you ask them, what do the atheists say? What do such and such people say? Then they might just say it, but it's like this. It would be latent, and that would cover them. Your question would cover them. La ilaha illallah. Intaha. This means intaha. It doesn't mean eh. Okay. Um, when it comes to the tool of narration, there are many details. MashaAllah. There is on the channel, there is a lesson that you can listen to. Quoting statements is its name, perhaps, or tool of narration. Some very interesting details there. Insha'Allah, in future, perhaps we can go through it and elaborate a little further. But that's a good lesson that we have on the channel. MashaAllah, extensive. The next exception. وتستثنى حالة كون الشخص متأولا باجتهاده في فهم الشرع، فإنه لا يكفر المتأول أي في غير القطعيات، كتأول الذين منعوا الزكاة في عهد أبي بكر بأن الزكاة وجبت في عهد الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم، لأن صلاته عليهم عند دفع الزكاة إليه كانت سكنا لهم وطهرة، وأن ذلك انقطع بموته، فإن الصحابة لم يكفروهم لذلك. The next situation in which a person might utter a kufr statement but be excused from being judged as a blasphemer is if a person had an interpretation of the religious law. There was a case in which they misunderstood. So they had an interpretation that was religious, that was different to what our religion says. They weren't doing that. They weren't belying the religious rule actively. They didn't know that it was like that. So in this case, a person would be excused from kufr except if it was in al-qat'iyat. Al-qat'iyat refers to the core matters of belief, the matters that pertain to the attributes of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala and the attributes of the prophets. Those attributes that a person could have deduced by way of the intellect alone. Those attributes that one is not allowed to deny or doubt about. Like the fact that Allah is unlike the creation, that Allah is without place and time does not lapse upon Allah and that Allah doesn't change. In these matters, if a person misunderstood something and ended up believing that Allah changes, then this person is not excused. Despite the fact that, yes, they made a mistake in something to do with Al-Islam, but they made a mistake in the core matter of belief. So they are not excused. They are judged as a kafir. As for if it was not to do with the core matters of belief, like one of the religious rules, for example, something to do with wudu, as an example, then if they made a mistake, they didn't know the correct judgment, they thought it was another way, then this person would not be judged as a kafir. They would be excused from blasphemy. But remember, we're not saying here that they are safe from sin, because a person should not speak about the religious matters unless they know. Otherwise, if they speak about religious matters without having the correct knowledge, they will make mistakes, of course, and they are judged to have given a judgment without knowledge. And that is an enormous sin. So although sometimes people would be safe from kufr because of their mistake, because of their misunderstanding, they would be safe from kufr, but that doesn't mean that they that doesn't mean that they did not sin. Okay, so let's look at an example of one of these mistakes, a mistaken interpretation that was not kufr, that those people were not judged as kuffar because of. Let me make something clear also, actually. If somebody says something that goes against a rule in the religion, to say something against a rule in Islam, this is called belying. And belying is kufr, right? Okay. But when it comes to a lot of the rules, let's say, if a person belied, but he didn't belie actively, then although he is belying, although what he is saying is kufr actually, because it's belying the religion, but this statement that is actually kufr, because that person said it, because they didn't know any better, we would not judge that person as a kafir because they had a misunderstanding. But the statement itself actually is kufr because it goes against the rules of the religion. Okay, so let's give an example of a mistake that originally, of course, if it's against the rules of the religion, it is kufr. But some people were excused from being judged as kuffar because they weren't actively belying. They thought that they were right. Okay, what is that? Like the interpretation, the incorrect interpretation of those that prevented paying a zakah in the time of our master Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. There were people who decided not to pay a zakah. Why? They said zakah was an obligation upon us in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the messenger, because his dua for us when we would pay a zakah, it would grant us sakan. It would grant us peace, tranquility, and it was a purification for us. He would make dua for us. And now that that has cut off because of his death, because we can't give him our zakah and he makes dua for us. We can't give him the zakah for him to distribute because he's passed away. They said because that has cut off now, and we were obligated to give it to him, because Allah revealed, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, take from their money, the zakah, صَدَقَةً. So indeed, the Sahaba did not judge these people that did not pay a zakah as non-Muslims. Why? Because they were mistaken. They misinterpreted an ayah of the Quran. They misunderstood this ayah of the Quran. So they were trying to follow the truth, but they were mistaken. They misinterpreted. So Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu didn't judge them as non-Muslims, but they were educated. They were educated. So although saying when zakat is an obligation upon one, saying zakat is not an obligation, this is kufr. Of course it's kufr. But they had an interpretation, which was a mistake, of course, but that interpretation of theirs meant that they weren't actively belying the religion on purpose whilst knowing. No, they didn't know. This is a very important statement. وَلَيْسَ كُلُّ مُتَأَوِّلٍ يَمْنَعُ عَنْهُ تَأْوِيلُهُ التَّكْفِيرِ. And not every interpreter, not every person who makes an interpretation in the religion, not every person with, let's say, an understanding of an ayah, their own understanding of an ayah, not every person who makes an interpretation, not every person who makes an interpretation does his interpretation stop him from being called a kafir. No. Meaning, in other words, some people will understand certain things from the religious texts. They will understand some things that are wrong. We're not saying here that all of those people who misunderstood are excused from kufr. No. Because some of them make mistakes when it comes to al-qat'iyat, daruriyatul i'tiqad. They make mistakes in the core matters of belief, and they are not excused. So not every misinterpretation is, not every misinterpretation saves a person from kufr. No. No. Those people who didn't give a zakah, their misinterpretation or misunderstanding of the ayah, although they said something that was kufr, that we don't have to pay zakah, but because they were mistaken, because they misunderstood, because they weren't actively belying, they weren't charged with blasphemy. لأن التأول مع قيام الدليل القاطع لا يمنع التكفير عن صاحبه وإلا للزم ترك تكفير المجوس وعبدة الأوثان وغيرهم من طوائف الكفار لأنهم على حسب زعمهم اجتهدوا فالذي يعتقد أن كل متأول يعذر مهما كان تأوله فقد كذب الشريعة. The Shaykh said, why is it that not every interpretation saves a person from kufr? Why? Because an interpretation of something, while there is solid proof that says otherwise, solid proof that says, for example, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, Allah is not like the creation. This is known as الدليل القاطع, a definitive proof. that Allah is not like the creation. So if somebody comes and says, oh, well, Allah is in the sky, Allah is on a throne, Allah is something that comes up and down, wal-iyadhu billah. If someone says that, then it goes against ad-dalil al-qati', it goes against the definitive proof. So that interpretation of theirs, believing that Allah is in the sky and on the throne, that interpretation, it does not prevent them from becoming non-Muslims. It doesn't prevent them. Someone might say, oh, but like the other case of zakah, these people misunderstood. Yes, true, but they're misunderstood in a matter of the core of belief. So this is kufr. Had it been the case that a misinterpretation or a misunderstanding in the core matters of belief was a reason for a person to be excused from kufr, had it been an excuse that, oh, you misunderstood? Yes, 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 you're excused. Then we would have to refrain from charging with blasphemy the fire worshippers, the or the magus. We would have to refrain, hypothetically, we'd have to refrain from charging with blasphemy the idol worshippers and others from the different types of non-Muslims. Why? Because according to that claim, those people exerted an effort and uh, they after exerting an effort, they concluded something that was wrong. So the one that believes that every interpretation or every misinterpretation is excused, whatever that misinterpretation was, then this person has belied the religious law. ومعنى فليحذر الإنسان من ذلك جهده. Did we even read that? Oh, that was here. فليحذر الإنسان من ذلك جهده على أي حال. The meaning of, sorry, we'll go back here. معنى فليحذر الإنسان من ذلك جهده على أي حال أي ليعمل الإنسان على تجنب ذلك كله غاية مستطاعه. The meaning of a person should exert his effort in every situation to avoid that, to avoid kufr. This means let a person work to avoid all of that. They work extremely hard. They work as much as they can to avoid that. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the chapter of Ridda. Actually, we'll stop here. I think that's a good place to stop so we can continue next time, insha'Allah ta'ala. Okay. You see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you accidentally started to draw on the screen there. Be mindful. On the screen there are many buttons and many gadgets, and subhanallah. Barakallahu fikum. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So we got up to page 117. Bookmark it somehow. So there is our bookmark. Okay. The next sections. خير إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم. تصبحون على الخير إن شاء الله تعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.